What is up, guys? James here from the Light of Riga YouTube channel, and today we're going to be doing a review for the Llewellyn Tarot. This review has been a long time coming. This is one of the first tarot decks I ever got. One of my most favorite tarot decks. I'll say that before the review even starts so you know where I'm coming from. And I really wanted to do a review for this deck because it's one of my most favorite decks, like I said, and it's very underappreciated. Okay, it's not very appreciated is what I'm trying to say. So I wanted to spread the word on the Llewellyn Tarot. This is a beautiful, gorgeous deck. It's published by Llewellyn Tarot, obviously. It's made by Anna Marie Ferguson. And it's a watercolor-based druidic slash Wicca style deck. So if you work with Druidcraft, it's very much in that vein, but the artwork's very different. And before I get any further into this review, I do want to state that I have modified my deck significantly. I've trimmed the borders and I edged the edges brown. So this is not exactly what the deck looks like, but I still wanted to do this review so that you get a sense of this deck and what kind of customization potentials it has as well. The first thing we'll see is that it comes in this box. Pretty standard. It's nothing fancy. It's actually pretty flimsy. I wouldn't recommend storing anything in here, but it's a box. Okay, a lot of reviewers talk about the box, so I thought I'd talk about the box. It's a box, whatever. Okay, nothing fancy, nothing crazy. It's a box. It'll do, pig. But what's inside the box is what matters, and what comes inside the box is the Tarot Companion to the Llewellyn Tarot, and this book is, I've got mixed feelings about it. This deck is kind of based on Rider-Waite-Smith, but not exactly. As a first deck, I don't think I would recommend this book. It's not going to teach you necessarily how to read tarot. It's more focused on spreading the knowledge, the wisdom, the legacy of Druidry and Wicca, of pagan religion or pagan philosophies or ideals. So this is a very pagan deck, very pagan book. It's got a few, spreads here, like the Celtic cross, of course, a horseshoe, some, run-of-the-mill things. But what you're going to notice about this book is it says a lot about the Welsh mythology that's behind every card, especially with the major arcanas. The major arcana each major arcana tells kind of a Welsh mythology story. And if you want to learn more about it, that's what this this book is for. So the book is a little bit stuffy. I will say that if you're not totally interested in Welsh mythology, it's going to kind of bore you a little bit. It does give some great insights into the cards and what they mean. And if you want to learn more about Druidry, then this is the place to go. It has all of the folklore, the mythology is all in here. But then look how much is said about each card. Kind of like Little White Bookish. So this book is definitely more about the theology behind the deck, which is great. It helps you to understand the cards, and actually some of the stories, especially with the major arcana, help you to understand the meanings of the cards if you can remember the story behind them. So a mixed kind of opinion on this book. But it's a book, and so it's like I said, definitely adds some to the backstory of the tarot. So now let's take a look at the deck. Alright, what I'm going to do now is a deck flip through. I'm going to flip through the cards rather quickly. If you want to pause the video and check out a card in more detail, you are absolutely welcome to do so. We're going to start with the majors, then go through the wands, the cups, the swords, and then the pentacles. And I'll just talk about this deck as I flip through. We're going to start with the Fool, obviously. And first thing you're going to notice is the watercolors. It's vibrant. It really has a kind of a theme all its own, and you can definitely feel the pagan traditions coming through almost immediately. Like, for instance, this is the High Priestess, not traditional, she's in nature. That's pretty cool. I like the nature High Priestess. And one thing you're going to notice, I've removed the borders, and the borders actually tell you the name of each card and give you a kind of a hint into the mythology behind it. It'll tell you the name of the person or the place where this card is supposed to represent, with the majors at least. And I've kind of removed those, so I've made it a little bit difficult for myself to read this deck, but I've been working with it for so long that I've actually memorized all the cards. I know what they are. For instance, I get this one in Strength mixed up. This is the Chariot, but if you look, the next card is Strength. They're very similar. So again, I wouldn't recommend trimming this deck unless you work with it kind of substantially. I trimmed it almost immediately because, oh man, the borders are like like huge, like that big. I know you can't see, but huge borders, and one of the most offensive, one of the biggest offenders of borders is this deck here. It's just a shame because these depictions, these images are so beautiful. They're gorgeous. You know, there's not too many watercolor decks in the tarot community. And the fact that this one was kind of constrained by gigantic borders. I mean, if you want to see what the deck looks like before the trimming, then you could just go do a Google search. I'm sorry I don't have any examples for you, but I trimmed this years ago, a long time ago at least. And so I don't have an example, but you can check the internet and you'll see for yourself how thick these borders are. So yes, I wouldn't recommend trimming the borders until you get to know this deck a little bit, so that you understand, because this is the devil. It's not called the devil, it's called the horned one, and unless you're familiar with this deck you wouldn't realize it. But the horned one is, you know, another, it's based on Cernunnos, which is another Welsh mythological figure. So definitely this deck is aimed towards people who practice Druidry or Wicca, and it's still Rider-Waite-Smith based. It's very heavily Rider-Waite-Smith, but there's some big changes, sort of like the moon here. There's no two dogs, or a dog and a wolf and a scorpion or whatever, or is it crab, whatever. It's an eagle flying alone through the night. So there are definite changes here. Like there's no baby on a horse. This is a grown man. This is I forget his name. It's very hard to pronounce their names. Arvins. I don't speak Gaelic, so I don't know. But like there's definite departures from Rider-Waite-Smiths. For instance, this is the world card. The world card doesn't show the traditional world. This is more of I forget the mythology behind this as well, but this is more of a scene rather than a person overlooking everything, right? So you can tell how it's sort of Rider-Waite-Smith, but at the same time not. And one thing I definitely really like about this deck are the colors. The colors do give you a kind of a sense of what the card is trying to say, at least what kind of energy the card is trying to portray. Here's the Four of Wands. And it's definitely a color-based deck, I would say. You know, the wands, the intuition, the solar plexus are all kind of intertwined. And that's why most of these cards are yellow, to give you the idea that this is about doing. The wands are about putting action out into the world. So a lot of these are yellowish, orangish backgrounds, which I really like. It makes reading a lot easier. You can sort of immediately feel the energy of the card, rather than having to go into the intuition or go into the brain and say, oh, the Nine of Wands is about being tired, right? No, you feel it, because you feel like this yellow. If you know about the colors, right? If you know about what each color represents, and it makes things a lot easier. The court cards are pretty standard. I wouldn't say there's anything special about the courts. They're your run-of-the-mill court cards, nothing too out of the ordinary. They're pretty standard. So I can't really, tout up the court cards too much. They're pretty ho-hum. As we get into the water, we get into the cups, and now you see the colors change to a little bit more of a bluish color, just to kind of, make that connection with water and with emotions and with feelings. And man, do I have to tell you how beautiful these cards are? What I use this deck for is this is definitely a deck for me to use when I need to use a lot of cards. When I'm doing a spread with a lot of cards, this deck works out really well. Or if I'm traveling, if I need to take a deck somewhere, because before I trimmed it, the cards were pretty much standard tarot size, I would say. If I had to guess, maybe here's you can't really see, but huge. That's an oracle card, but that's they were maybe a little bit smaller than that. I wish I had an old card to show you, but wait a second, do I? Hold on, let me open my. I do! Oh, here we go. I'm sorry. Here's what they looked like before. Let's just put them side to side. Aha! We did it. I knew I had it somewhere. So yeah, that's how big the cards are before. This is how big they are after. If I have a quarter. I'm all over the place here. I'm sorry. Here's a quarter, so you can see. That's a quarter. If you're American. Anyway, I digress. I'm just trying to say that before I trimmed it, I would definitely say it's your standard tarot deck, right? It's your standard size. But now that I've trimmed it, it is very small. It fits very easily into the palm of my hand. So I use this more as a travel deck. and it just travels so well. I can put it anywhere. I don't need like a special tarot bag necessarily, because I can just put it into any kind of little bag that I have, and it travels really well. The images are universal. Even though that it's based in Druidry and Wicca tradition, the images are universal, I feel like. And as we come to the swords, this is, in my opinion, probably the best sword suit I've ever seen. Immediately, you can see things get darker, things get bleaker. The sky is overcast, and the blues get a little bit darker, and it's a little bit more ominous. You can see, look how ominous the suit of swords is, especially the negative ones, the 5 of swords. Look at it. It's foreboding. There's storm clouds in the air, and it just really helps with the intuition. The 6 of swords has storm clouds as well, but it's a little bit lighter, and it's not so bleak as the 5 of swords, right? But then you get to the 7 of swords, and it's dark again because there's deception, right? So it's definitely easy on the intuition. It's easy for beginners, though I wouldn't recommend this deck to a rank beginner. Maybe if this was your second deck. I mean, not to say that you can't use this as a first deck. You absolutely can. It's going to require a little bit more study, since it's not strictly Rider-Waite-Smith imagery. But if it is your first deck, then this is a great. I would be happy to have this as a first deck, simply because the artwork is amazing. It's stunning. This artwork is out of control. I love it so much. I'm tired of talking about it. You guys can see for yourselves. I hope the lighting is good so you guys can see that. But okay, as we get to Pentacles, things get a little bit more golden sheened. Whoops, right? Except the Pentacles that are about volatility, huh? The volatile cards have some dark weather to them, but the more positive cards are a lot brighter. There's a lot more sunlight, as you can see here, and yeah, the Pentacles are golden. Isn't that cool? That's how Pentacles should be. It's about money and finances, but then the 5 of Pentacles is dark. It's like the only dark Pentacle, and that's because there's not enough money, right? It makes sense to me. I like it a lot. I think you're going to like it too. I highly encourage you to take a chance on this deck, but just know that the borders are going to be huge. If borders don't bother you, then that's great, but to me the borders were just all-encompassing. It was just overpowering the card, and once I trimmed this deck, it felt so much more like itself. Like the images were free to play and to go out and explore and to bring some new intuition, new insights, because that the borders feel like they kind of close in the insights. I don't know, that's just me. I'm a weirdo, I'm sorry. As we get to the last few here, so all in all, this deck does take a lot of work. I'll say that. This deck requires work from you. It requires you to learn a little bit of the mythology behind the deck. It requires you, if you're gonna, remove the borders, that takes a lot of work, and I feel like it's pretty much necessary to do so. So that takes a lot of work on that. And then if you do remove the borders, you're gonna have to, memorize some things. It's not strictly Rider-Waite-Smith, so it's not going to be cut and dry sometimes. But when you work with this deck as long as I have, you know it by heart, and you come to love it, and it's all worth it in the end. So as far as my recommendation for the Llewellyn Tarot, absolutely one of the most underrated artwork wise decks there is. It's just so gorgeous, and there's not really too many decks like it. I can't think of any watercolor decks that can come close to this deck, and just the style is just beautiful. I love it so much. I think you will too. You can find it all over the place. Wherever you can find a tarot deck, you can find the Llewellyn Tarot. It's everywhere. So, shining recommendation from me. I love it a lot. Beautiful artwork. It does require some work to get used to, but what tarot deck doesn't? All right, so that is my review for the Llewellyn Tarot. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Please leave a like if you did. It lets me know that you got something out of this review. Be sure to put any comments in the comment section if you want to talk about the Llewellyn. I'd be open to discussion. And please be sure to subscribe if you haven't already to stay up to date. Not only do I do deck reviews, I also do free readings bi-monthly. I also do a free weekly reading. So a lot of readings to catch up on, and a lot of decks and all sorts of things. So hit that subscribe button if you would. And plus, if you want a reading from me, then you can do that. Etsy, link below, and we can do a private reading. All right, that is the Llewellyn Tarot. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Leave a like if you did. Happy taroting. Peace.